Happy Sunday afternoon to our Bayou Blitz family and Saints fans from all over the world. Brendan Boylan here with my buddy, my partner in crime, Bob Rose. It's the Bayou Blitz pregame show brought to you by the Saints News Network. And Bob, the bitter rivalry continues. The New Orleans Saints a chance to hop into the all-time regular series lead for the first time in franchise history today against the Atlanta Falcons. How you doing today, and what are you looking forward to with yet another?
Good morning / good afternoon to you, Brendan, and to all you Bayou Blitz family members. I don't know whether you're on East Coast time, Central time zone, but whether it's morning or afternoon, top of the day to you. And yeah, we've seen, especially for us more seasoned Saints fans, we have seen a lot of these Falcons Saints rivalry games that meant nothing and little to nothing in the standings. And this one kind of does. Both teams have mathematical chances. The Falcons a little bit stronger than New Orleans. But realistically, neither of these teams are playoff caliber teams. So, if you are an older Saints fan, it does give you kind of that feel of a 1980s mid 1980s Saints game, Saints Falcons game, or mid 1990s Saints Falcons game. But I will tell you this, from watching those games, hopefully this game has that same kind of intensity. Because like you said, the Saints have a chance to take the lead in the regular season series history. All in all, because they lost that one playoff game at home to the Falcons in 1991. The overall series lead right now is to Atlanta, 54-53. And Atlanta also, interestingly enough, leads the series when the games are played in New Orleans, 27-26. So, the Saints could even everything across the board, plus literally torpedo the Falcons' playoff chances while keeping their own slim hopes alive. Teams like this, that are suffering through poor years, you really find out what kind of character the individual players have. When they have seemingly nothing to play for, other than pride, and the sheer competitiveness. For a Saints team that I have questioned the character of all year long, it's got put up or shut up time. For some of these players that might be fighting for a job in 2023.
Absolutely. Can't forget contract incentives in what you were saying there, because what was it, a couple years ago, it was Emmanuel Sanders who had the incentive for like 70 catches in a season, or 75 catches in a season. He got it there at the bitter end. So I know some of those guys are playing for some extra money in their paychecks as well. But Bob, this is a long, bitter rivalry, and we talked about it a little bit on Wednesday, highlighting some of our favorite moments from the rivalry. Not a whole lot.
By the way, we both forgot Shy Tuttle that night. How could we forget Shy Tuttle's stiff arm on Thanksgiving night?
I brought it up on Under the Dome on Tuesday. I definitely said that's one that the gifs live on forever, if you will. The memes and the gifs live on forever. And let's just address what we're talking: Falcons, Shy Tuttle, and stiff arms. Matt Ryan last night, or in the afternoon yesterday. I've said it for years. I think he's going to end up in the Hall of Fame. The numbers are there. He's got the MVP. But to have those two games, the Super Bowl and then that on your resume, that does not help you at all. And I know Cameron Jordan's going to be missing playing him today. We've talked about that so many times. One of the most fun stats out there. Most sacks of one player on one quarterback in NFL history. That can't live on, but Cameron Jordan's success against the Falcons can, and he's going to be facing a rookie quarterback in Desmond Ridder today. He's making his NFL debut, not just his first NFL start, his first NFL snap will happen today against the Saints. We talked about it a little bit, the Saints and their history against rookie quarterbacks in the Superdome. Not great over the last 15 to 20 years. How do the Saints flip that script today?
I'll tell you, and I wrote a little bit about this, in an article yesterday and, on the Saints News Network this morning. The conventional wisdom when you're facing an inexperienced quarterback, especially a rookie, is to blitz him heavily. And, while we'll see some blitzes from the Saints, I think it's going to be a very interesting interaction, battle of wits. between Demario Davis, the New Orleans team defensive captain, and Ridder and Arthur Smith, the Falcons head coach. What I expect to see is, you can't let an inexperienced quarterback get into a rhythm. That's the worst possible thing that you could do. So the New Orleans, even without Marshawn Lattimore today, and they will be without him, we'll get into inactives in a minute. New Orleans needs to play very aggressively on a pedestrian crew of Atlanta receivers. We're really, Drake London is your only viable threat, but he's a big physical guy that plays right into the hands of the kind of play that the Saints secondary likes to execute. Outside of that, you need to take away Atlanta's running game. That's been a crutch for them all year long, even when Marcus Mariota was the starting for Atlanta the first 13 games. You strip them of their running game. You blanket their receivers to not give Ridder any easy looks, and then you can mix up your coverage and rush packages as needed. I look for Demario Davis and Caden Ellis to blitz yesterday, but also to run a lot of fake blitzes. Come up in those gaps and then drop at the last minute to try to confuse Ridder. That strategy will be even more effective if the Saints defensive line, both tackles and edge rushers, can win their matchups and create disruption without the aid of blitzing. You check off all those boxes, and this Saints defense certainly has the personnel to do exactly that. You check off all those boxes. I can't see a player like Desmond Ridder having success in his initial start.
How important is it today for the New Orleans Saints to stop the run? Obviously, the old saying goes, a quarterback's best friend is a strong running game, and that's not just for rookie quarterbacks, but it's for quarterbacks of any experience level in the NFL. But I would say, especially for rookie quarterbacks or quarterbacks making their NFL debut, being able to take some of that pressure off and being able to hand the ball off and get 3, 4, 5 yards a carry is one of the best things that could happen, especially for a guy who wasn't like a first-round pick quarterback, but a third-round pick quarterback, a guy that, there's some upside, but we don't really know what his NFL future holds. How important is it for Atlanta with their two-headed monster rushing attack to get that going, and how important is it equally for the Saints to stop that and force Ridder into some third and longs?
Oh, Brendan, it's absolutely crucial. We already mentioned that that's one of the major keys to having success against a rookie quarterback. But remember, folks, this Atlanta team literally pushed the Saints all over the field for 3.5 quarters in week 1. And a lot of us thought that was kind of an anomaly at the time. It turned out to be kind of a precursor to the Saints' struggles all year. Now that run defense for New Orleans has played markedly better over the last 3, maybe 4 weeks. But they're going to be tested by Atlanta again, because the Falcons have had little punch in their passing attack. And I expect that to continue. I mean, Ridder has a far greater upside than Marcus Mariota as a thrower, but the Falcons come in with the 31st ranked passing offense in the NFL. They've been under 200 yards passing for 10 games this season, including 5 straight. However, the Falcons rank 4th in rushing production this year. They're averaging nearly 160 yards a game. That offensive line of Atlanta's, which we like to poke fun of a lot, they still struggle in pass protection, but they have blossomed into a very physical run blocking unit. And that's what they're going to try to do right out of the gate. Like you said, ease up the pressure on Desmond Ridder a little bit, set up play action, slow that pass rush. It's on the Saints to take that away. We mentioned tight coverage on the receivers, mixing up your coverages, getting pressure with your defensive front. All that is important, but all that isn't going to mean a damn thing if they can't stop the run, because Atlanta will just run down their throats all day long.
Well, with what you just said, the Falcons ranking 4th in the league in rushing yards this season, how much of that does reflect on Marcus Mariota, and how much do you think the game plan for quarterback runs changes? Ridder's still athletic, but maybe not quite the athlete Mariota is.
Yeah, you're right. He isn't. And Ridder is a bit more of a traditional pocket passer. Not that much of a thing exists anymore. But with Mariota, Atlanta ran a lot of RPOs. When he did drop back to pass, rarely was it straight back in a pocket. They moved him around on half rolls, and bootleg options. While Ridder has that kind of athleticism, and I don't see them completely scrapping that plan, I do look for Ritter to drop back a little bit more often than what we saw from Mariota. Yeah, because Ritter, like you said, Brendan, he's not the pure runner that Marcus Mariota is. However, Ritter does have nice escapability. He did run for over 2,800 yards over 4 years at the University of Cincinnati. And he scored like 26 or 28 touchdowns. However, a lot of those were not designed runs like we saw the Falcons do with Mariota. So while a lot of that playbook that they've used for 13 games will still be in place, I also look for them to try to take advantage of what Ritter does well as a thrower, which is much different than what Marcus Mariota did. Therefore, I think the Saints are going to have their chances at Desmond Ritter in the pass pocket. And then the Atlanta running game is going to be more on the shoulders of Cordero Patterson and Tyler Algier this afternoon.
Well, let's go ahead and jump into the injury report. Bob alluded to a couple guys that were out already, but here's your official inactive list. Marshawn Lattimore, Dwayne Washington, PJ Williams, Eno Benjamin, who the Saints just got off of waivers, Lewis Kidd and Peyton Turner are all out for New Orleans. That leaves New Orleans themselves very thin at running back, since we were talking about the rushing attack. I talked about it plenty this week in some fantasy articles and my X Factors. Alvin Kamara hasn't quite lived up to Alvin Kamara-like expectations this season. He's nearing 1,000 scrimmage yards, but he only has 3 touchdowns, and we're really used to seeing Kamara reach somewhere between 15 and 1,800 scrimmage yards a season. In a game like this, where you're going to be without Dwayne Washington, who I know is more of a special teamer, but has certainly got snaps at running back throughout his career, you're going to be without Eno Benjamin, who you just picked up off waivers. I'm really excited for the prospect of him in this offense. And you're without Mark Ingram for the remainder of the season. That puts a lot of pressure on a guy like Kamara, who is going to have his favorable matchups today. What do you expect the Saints to do with Alvin Kamara? Because as much as Kamara has been disappointing, I think you can point towards the play calling as well.
Yeah, you can point towards the play calling. And because of that, my expectation for Alvin Kamara today is I don't know. He's been under 100 all scrimmage yards for the last 7 games, I believe. And you look back to this week, to the week 1 matchup against Atlanta. He touched the ball, I think 12 times. Had 47 total yards. Again, we thought that was an anomaly at the time. That turned out to be kind of the precursor for Alvin Kamara's season. And a lot of the blame does go to coaches. You don't run the NFL's best all-purpose back up the gut all game long. You need to get him involved as a receiver early on. You need to take advantage of what he does best, which is his open field athleticism. You need to take advantage of that by getting him in open field, by getting him on the edge. Pete Carmichael in his Pee Wee football playbook, that just simply hasn't been the case. But you know what? I point some of that finger of blame at Alvin Kamara himself too. To me, he has looked disinterested in different games during the season. But what I've noticed is this: if the Saints get Kamara involved as a receiver, he's going to touch the ball in the first series. But if the Saints get Kamara involved as a receiver in that first drive, that is usually an indicator that Alvin is going to have a nice all-around football game. And that, again, that tells me that they need to do something to keep Kamara's interest. That's on the player and the coaches equally. But like you said, Atlanta actually has 2 inside linebackers that I really like, Mykal Walker and Rashaan Evans. But they're more of inside the box guys or drop straight back in zone coverage guys. They're not the kind of athletic guys that are going to be able to match up with Kamara on the edge or in open space. So Pete Carmichael, football 101. What do you do when when your running back has a significant athletic advantage over the top 2 tacklers on the other team's linebacking core? You get him in space. So, even though I don't know that we'll expect to see this, what I would do is run Kamara on a lot of screens, wheel routes, things out of the backfield to kind of get that offense humming, to get Andy Dalton into a rhythm, and more importantly, get Alvin Kamara into a rhythm. I think that's the underrated key to the Saints offense today.
Well, I think you could see, or at least what you were saying is you could see a lot of Alvin Kamara option routes. That would be a great way to go offensively today. Kamara's had some nice games in his career against Atlanta. Obviously, Deion Jones, while he was there in Atlanta, a very athletic linebacker, gave Kamara some issues, but not enough to really slow Kamara down. And he found the end zone a lot against the Falcons.
Mhm.
Bob, looking at the stats, I think the one thing that surprised me, yeah, the 3 touchdowns is a low number for Alvin Kamara, but the fact that they all came in one game. Kamara has yet to score a touchdown in a game outside of the game against Las Vegas earlier this season. That was back in week 8. We're 7 weeks from that. It's been slow for the entire Saints offense, and it's very much reflected by their best all-around player. Talking about the Saints offense, the offensive line getting healthier.
Mhm.
The Saints receiving corps outside of Michael Thomas as healthy as they've been all year. And then you have Andy Dalton, who has had some nice games as of late. When you're facing a team like Atlanta, who, shoot, I think you and I both said at the beginning of the season, when you look at the roster on paper, maybe the least talented roster in football, how do you take advantage of the defense today? And what are you really playing for outside of pride if you're this Saints offense? Because, like you said, there's plenty of guys on this roster that have some question marks, not just with their Saints future, but potentially their NFL future.
Yeah, they do. And Andy Dalton could be playing for a contract. Alvin Kamara, and I keep teasing this, one of these days we'll actually delve into it. Alvin Kamara could be playing for his future in New Orleans. Chris Olave is playing for the Saints franchise rookie receiving yardage record. Rashid Shaheed could be playing for a shot at the number 2 receiving spot next year. I don't think he gets it, but nonetheless, he's been a bigger part of the offense in recent weeks. Trevor Penning has to really show that he's that the investment of a number 1 draft choice was a smart investment by New Orleans. I don't think he gets to start over James Hurst today, but it would be nice to see Penning kind of distinguish himself in those jumbo packages. That will earn him more snaps before the end of the regular season. So I mean, things like that. Traquan Smith, Marquez Callaway, they might be playing for their New Orleans future. Jawan Johnson, I'd like to see him. He's been banged up with an ankle injury, but he is active today. I'd like to see him, continue, what's been, I think, a strong campaign for him. But you're going against an Atlanta defense that ranks 30th in overall yardage, 27th against the pass, 25th against the run. So on paper, you should be able to do anything you want. But when you're playing against a defense like that, similar to what a rookie quarterback, the strategy against a rookie quarterback, you cannot let that defense get any confidence. So you have to come out very aggressively with a relatively even run-pass ratio to keep them on their toes, to keep them from getting any confidence. Because when a defense, even with a poor personnel, when a defense gets a little bit of confidence, early on, that usually indicates that they're going to have a strong game. So again, you have to keep the Falcons on their toes. The last few weeks, Atlanta's been giving up a boatload of rushing yards. Last 4 weeks, they've averaged 180 yards on the ground against them. As a result, since other teams have literally run them into the ground, the passing numbers are a little bit low. But you take a closer look at the offenses that they faced have been Washington, Carolina, Pittsburgh, and the New York Giants. None of those teams are going to wow anybody with their aerial game. And while New Orleans receiving core outside of Chris Olave, and the potential of Rashid Shaheed, they're frankly not very good beyond those two. But the Falcons have had trouble defending tight ends. We've already talked about Kamara's advantage, and Chris Olave. Remember when these two teams first played, Michael Thomas had nearly 100 yards and 2 scores. Jarvis Landry did have 100 yards. Chris Olave was only playing in his first professional game. Since then, Olave has become the alpha of that Saints passing game. And even though he'll be matched up a lot of the time against A.J. Terrell, the Falcons' best defensive back, I like Olave in that matchup. I like Rashid Shaheed to make a couple of plays too. It's the kind of thing that with a Saints offensive unit that struggled, with a Falcons defensive unit that struggled, which one is going to grab the momentum early on? On paper, I actually like the Saints in this matchup.
I would tend to agree with you. However, this is a Saints team, and you said it at the open. You've questioned their character this season. Not last week because they were on a bye, but the week prior against the Bucks, I questioned the heart of the team. I think a lot will be said early on.
Yeah.
You watch the first drive for each offense, and you should be able to tell which team came to play, which team has more of that fight in this rivalry. And yeah, there's not a whole lot to play for if you're the Saints. Obviously, the Falcons are on the outside looking in. They have to have a couple things happen, but they got to win games, so they're playing for something, a potential shot at a playoff berth.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're the New Orleans Saints, you want to beat your rival, A, but B, how many times do you have the opportunity to completely knock your rival out of playoff contention? That's a win, not just for the Saints. That's a morale boost for the Saints. That's a morale boost for a fan base that is shaking their heads right now. And the Superdome's going to be popping today. That they're going to come out and show out against their division rival. But man, the team and the fan base could definitely use a morale boost. And yeah, a win does that, but a win against your bitter rival and knocking them out of playoff contention will certainly do so. Bob, in a few short words, how do the Saints defeat the Atlanta Falcons at home today in a game that, as I just said, is almost meaningless to not just the record, but the season as a whole?
Be aggressive on both sides of the ball. Be aggressive and then maintain that aggressiveness. I think it goes without saying that you need to avoid the self-inflicted mistakes, turnovers, penalties, things like that. But here's the thing: you're talking about a 5-8 team and a 4-9 team. All show long we've been talking about, what do these guys have to play for? And these guys, most of them are strong competitors, but when you get down, when you're 5-8, 4-9, when you have a losing record and you're probably not going to the playoffs, when you get down early in these late season games, that's when you kind of see a player or a team emotionally kind of fold in their tents for the day. So, I think the team that stays aggressive early on and grabs momentum has the best shot at possibly running away with this thing. I actually do not expect this to be a close game whatsoever. But for the Saints to be the one on the blowout side, they have to be as sharp defensively as they were the last few weeks we saw them. And offensively, take advantage of your opportunities in the red zone. They've had the opportunities against Tampa Bay, cashed in with only field goals. They had opportunities against San Francisco, as tough as the 49ers defense was, and they completely failed in every opportunity there. I think you're going to have those same kind of chances against Atlanta, maybe more. If you got to cash in, because if you fail on a couple opportunities early on, mentally you might as well check out.
Kicking is for losers. Going all the way back to the week 8 that I referenced earlier, almost 2 months ago, kicking is for losers. And that's what the Saints have been this year, unfortunately. Bob, I think the biggest thing is, and I'm a little surprised to hear you say that you don't think it's going to be a tight game, because historically, most of these games against these two teams are tight, even when one team is awful and the other is not, or both teams are awful and what have you. I still think it's going to be tight. I think the score is going to be closer than the game is. I think that this is a classic case of one of those, is a team may win 24-21,
Sure.
but it's a garbage touchdown that makes the score look a lot closer. I think you always have to be mindful when you're taking on a rookie quarterback that doesn't have a whole lot of NFL tape, and you're looking at a lot of college things and what did he do here and what did he do there? Well, it's a completely different system. It almost becomes unpredictable. You have to get to Ritter early. That's going to be the key. Make him uncomfortable early. A lot of that falls on the shoulders of Cameron Jordan and Marcus Davenport. And as I mentioned on the onset, Jordan's had a lot of success against Atlanta. It might as well continue, and it needs to continue if the Saints want to win this ball game. I'm looking towards Taysom Hill, and this isn't so much on Taysom Hill. This is more on Pete Carmichael. So maybe I'm looking at Pete Carmichael to look at his running back depth and go, I don't have running backs. and use Taysom Hill a little bit more. And we've talked about it throughout the season. Taysom Hill is not the ultimate key to this offense. However, he can serve a major role in this offense as essentially your number 2 running back, and he has had to because of the injuries to Mark Ingram. But I need to see more than like 4 or 5 carries a game.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're going to be using Kamara in the pass game effectively in matchups that he has the advantage in. So I'm really looking towards Taysom Hill to be your change of pace back, for lack of a better term today. I think that'll go a long way for New Orleans and would bode well for the Saints offense. I do want to say this because this is a good comment right here from Gumbo. The sun is shining on Bob this morning. I think that's a good sign. The sun isn't shining on Bob a whole lot this season. It's been a lot of angry Bob this year. So maybe you're on to something, Gumbo. And then this one, Bob, I'll let you give the full explanation. So the Saints only have 1 active running back today.
Technically 3. Fullback Adam Prentice, and at least I believe, in fact, I know, David Johnson will be active too. But yeah, essentially, it's just going to be Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill, like Brendan said.
Essentially. So, Bob, with all that, you said you don't see it being close. I see it being close. What's your final score prediction for today?
I'm going to go Saints 27, Falcons 10. I just think that this defense is feeling themselves a little bit of for New Orleans. I think they're kind of licking their chops at getting to Ritter, and the Falcons, outside of Cordero Patterson and Drake London, they really don't have any playmakers to scare defenses. I don't think the Saints need Marshawn Lattimore today. I think it's going to be a very defensive football game, where we're going to see, I hope, we're going to see Pete Carmichael come out aggressively. And then, if the Saints make some plays on both sides of the ball to grab a lead, that's when Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara kind of take over. So I think they're going to do just enough offensively. They're going to take advantage of the trips inside the red zone that I think the defense will give them, and just kind of roll away. I won't call it a rout, but I will call it a comfortable win.
I'm going to take the Saints in this one, 21-17. I think the Falcons score a garbage touchdown late. I'm still not confident in the Saints offense. I don't care that they're facing one of the worst.
How could you be?
Exactly right. I'm not confident in them at all. I do think they do enough to win the game. I think Kamara finally finds the end zone again. He really, really needs to. And if you read my fantasy articles today and you have Alvin Kamara this week, I'm sorry, because that is one of the hardest starts. It is a must start because you spent a 1st or 2nd round draft pick on him. More than likely a 1st
6th overall.
There you go, Bob.
Missed the playoffs by 1.5 points. F you, Alvin Kamara.
There's a lot of guys on your team. I'm sure you could say that too.
Oh, yeah.
Points. It's like, well, you couldn't get one more catch. But nonetheless, it's a really difficult start this week because you don't know what you're going to get out of not just Kamara, but the Saints offense as a whole week to week. And that's tough. And I think a lot of that goes on Carmichael. We'll have to have a whole Bayou Blitz episode later in the offseason on why Carmichael does or does not deserve to come back for the New Orleans Saints. But I'll take the Saints 21-17. They do enough. They frustrate Ritter enough. And this is going to be more of a defensive win than it is an offensive win. I want to give a quick update real quick to people, probably not Bob, but people that do care. Argentina takes the lead 3-2 in extra time in the World Cup final. Under 4 minutes remaining in the match, Lionel Messi scores his 2nd goal of the day as he's looking for his 1st ever World Cup championship. So that's been an exciting one, Bob. I know you're not a soccer guy, but that's been an exciting one.
I'm not. It's one of the few sports that I wasn't good at growing up, so I just never developed an aptitude for it. Plus I'm angry as a player. Go figure. As a player and a coach of the so-called secondary sports, track and field, volleyball. I put together a wonderful volleyball career. Have had an amazing track coaching career. Both of those sports are very popular Olympic sports where the United States has had good runs, good teams, great athletes. I want to see volleyball promoted and track promoted in the same way that soccer is promoted during the World Cup. I think I told people on the Jordy Hultberg show a couple weeks ago when America was still in the World Cup, parents, if you have a younger child and they have a talent and an interest for these secondary sports, soccer, volleyball, track. Man, there is money out there for collegiate scholarships if they are, that good. Not everybody has to play football, baseball, basketball. If your kid has an interest in soccer, volleyball, push them, reach out different areas that you live in and see what else is available, for them to get that extra training, to get that extra time. Folks, if you're in the Pittsburgh area, you know that I will do and have done individual coaching. Seek out people like that. So that's why I like to see interest in the World Cup. But as far as soccer, the sport, not for me.
I understand. Hey, my dad's coached now for going on 30 years soccer, and my sister played. My brother played for like a season. I played for a season. I wasn't very good at it either, Bob. I was playing goalie because, at the end of the day, I didn't like to run a whole lot. So let's just be honest. But nonetheless, Argentina was up 2-0. France scored twice in 2 minutes. And then it went to extra time. So it's been a fun experience. And you're absolutely right, Bob. If kids have an interest in some of those sports, let them play. And the whole idea of you have to master one sport and you can only play one is awful. That's a conversation Bob and I can get into another time, because good golly, look at some of the greatest athletes in the world right now and go back and look like their high school resumes and their youth resumes, and they played 3, 4, 5 sports. Because they learn different skills for their particular sport they end up mastering in each sport that they played. That's a different rant for a different day. But Bob, where can everybody follow you on the World Wide Web before we come back for halftime?
Folks, thank you for tuning in to our Bayou Blitz pregame show, as always, sponsored by the Saints News Network. And that's where you can follow all of us at the same time. Brendan, myself, John Hendricks, Kyle Mosley on the Saints News Network, which is available on Facebook or at Saints News on Twitter. To follow me personally, just look for Bob Rose on Facebook, at BobbyR2613 on Twitter. Brendan and I publish our articles and our Bayou Blitz shows, on our personal page and the Saints News Network. So do yourself a favor and just follow us across the board. Make sure you follow the Bayou Blitz Facebook page and at Bayou Blitz Pod on Twitter. Did I get that right?
Yeah, Bayou Blitz
All
Pod.
right, it didn't feel right, but it's harder to miss us than it is to grab us. So like I said, just follow us all across the board. If you already do, thank you and much love for you. I hope this holiday season so far finds you and your family in the happiest of moods, and it continues to do so. Make sure you join us at halftime.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys can follow me on Facebook, or rather, not really Facebook. I don't really do a whole lot of that, but the Bayou Blitz Facebook group. I'm in just about every Saints Facebook group. You can find our work there. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at BT Boylan. Obviously, like Bob said, follow the podcast at Bayou Blitz Pod. We stream everything there, along with doing polls week in and week out. We'll have a halftime show, and on Wednesday we'll have a special Christmas edition of the Bayou Blitz podcast. Sure. Because that's we got to find things to be happy about other than the Saints season, Bob. We have to think of something. We'll see what we can come up with, but thank you guys so much for tuning into the pregame show. Bob and I will be back at halftime. Saints Falcons in the Superdome. It should be another great edition of the historic rivalry. Until then, find peace, spread love, practice positivity, have a good cup of coffee or brunch, and we'll see you at halftime.